Linda Funk with the Master Teacher Project. I'm a senior English teacher, and today I showed my students a little formula for creating compound sentences without having them turn into run-on sentences. This is because I frequently see a problem in student writing when it comes to writing a compound sentence and avoiding a run-on sentence. So I put notes on the screen for students, and I'm going to replicate those here and walk through the formula that I give my students. And we label it as formula for composing compound sentences. First, students have to know what a sentence is, and oftentimes this is a problem. So I put a definition of a sentence on the board. And a sentence is a subject and a verb expressing a complete thought. I tell students that for a group of words to be a sentence, it has to make sense by itself. The formula that I give to students for a sentence is subject plus verb equal complete thought. After we define a sentence, I also give them another definition, and that other definition is from Constance Weaver in the book Teaching Adolescent Writers, and she says that a sentence is a subject doing. So we start with those definitions. Then I give students a definition of a compound sentence. And a compound sentence is when we connect two or more simple sentences into one. We want this to be grammatically correct, and sometimes that's where we end up having a problem, especially when it comes to the punctuation. So I put the formula on the board for students, and I tell them that an S equals a sentence in this formula, and that a small s also equals a sentence in the formula. By saying that, what I'm doing is I'm telling them that the big S is a symbol for a sentence, as is the small s, and I see that Word wanted to autocorrect that. Then we go to the formula. We have to connect our ideas together, and we use punctuation to help our ideas make sense. So we can have a sentence followed by a period, followed by another sentence, and that makes sense. And we know now that the S's each equal simple sentence. Then the next part of the formula is we can have a sentence, then we can have a semicolon, and we can have a sentence following that, and now we have a compound sentence. Or we can have a sentence followed by a coordinating conjunction, and I teach students the acronym FANBOY, so it's an FANBOYS, followed by a sentence with a period. I then put on another part of the board what FANBOY stands for, but I'm just going to put it over here. FANBOYS is the acronym for remembering all of the coordinating conjunctions. FAN, or rather not fan, but for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and the conjunction so. By remembering the acronym fanboys, I can remember all the different coordinating conjunctions, which students know are words that connect two or more simple sentences into a compound sentence. But there's another formula I teach students too, and that is the S followed by the semicolon, followed by a conjunctive adverb such as however, moreover, furthermore, and words like this, nevertheless. Okay. These are all conjunctive adverbs. And then that's followed by a comma, followed by the simple sentence, and then followed by the period. So sometimes my students don't understand what a conjunctive adverb is. So I have to define that and remind them that anything that is a conjunction is a word that connects and shows relationships. So a conjunctive adverb can show comparing and contrasting. It can show other relationships as well. It can show cause-effect relationships. It can show sequencing. So tell students to ask what relationship they want to show in their writing, in the sentences that they are creating, and the conjunctive adverbs can help them connect their ideas. There is also an empty set to this formula, and it is this: sentence, sentence connected with a comma. So I have students write that down and then cross through it and showing the strikeout so that it becomes a visual reminder to them that this is something that they should not do. The next thing I want them, and I need to unstrike when I'm writing, I want them to write examples. So I write some examples for them. I might have a day like I had today when I have some students who weren't on task very well, so I wrote some sample sentences to make a point about being on task and using their time wisely. And I started with this sentence: some students use study time wisely. I wanted to drive home the point. Then, because I'm working with the first part of the formula right here, I went ahead and I added my second sentence. Some students waste study time. Period. I know I have a simple sentence. We talked about it. Students being the subject, use is the verb, and over here, students the subject, and waste the verb. So that's the first example. Then I move on to the next example. Some students use study time wisely. And it's okay to go ahead and just copy and paste. And then some students waste study time. So I had all of this while I was working at the computer on the screen, discussing it with students. Then the next example is some students use study time wisely, comma, because I'm connecting with a coordinating conjunction, but because I want to show the contrast in ideas, some students waste study time. And then finally, I show them with a conjunctive adverb. Some students use study time wisely. However, comma, some students waste study time. When I'm talking to my students, I tell them that the reason we put the comma after however is because we don't have to have that conjunctive adverb in the sentence. And one of the things that's been very helpful to me over the years in thinking about when to use a comma and when not to use a comma is the question, can I lift that word or that phrase out of the sentence and have it make sense without, have the sentence make sense without that component in it? And in this case, the answer is yes. And I've already shown that with my example using the semicolon. Then we do the empty set. Some students use study time wisely, and some students waste study time. Because this is the empty set, and I want to make the point to students that it is a run-on sentence written like this. I go ahead and then highlight it and strike through it and ask them to do the same thing. What I tell students about using a semicolon for punctuating a compound sentence is this. I think, and I'm striking out again, I need to fix that. I think about semicolons the way I think about the period. Students understand periods pretty well. If they know that a semicolon functions in much the same way as a period, then the idea of how to use a semicolon makes more sense to them. I can tell them things like a semicolon adds variety to their writing. The semicolon shows that two ideas are more closely related than other ideas, and it helps them understand the concept that I want them to understand. So sometimes I even take this formula and I put it up on a bulletin board if I have time to make such a bulletin board. I don't always have time for the bulletin board, but it becomes a good reminder to students. After I've shown them the formula and given them a chance to ask questions about them, I tell them to now you try it. So I ask them to write sentences that show each part of the formula that I want them to use. I don't ask them to write the empty set, the one that is the no-no as far as I'm concerned. But I want them to understand the idea of writing a sentence and capitalizing the first letter in the first word of the sentence, because sometimes they get a little careless and they don't do that. And I want them to understand and see the relationship between the first sentence and the second sentence by using the semicolon, practice with the coordinating conjunction, and then practice with the conjunctive adverbs. And later I will show them a list of conjunctive adverbs. But I found out today that my students don't know the acronym fanboys, which surprised me. I did not have one student who knows that acronym. So that I know that I've given them something new. And even if I haven't, if I have students who know the acronym, in the past it's always worked out really well because they're able to help the students who don't know the acronym learn in and reinforce that it's a good memory aid too. So that's one way to help kids get a visual representation of writing compound sentences and punctuating them correctly rather than simply looking at the rules in a grammar book. And it doesn't take very long, and I found it to be very successful. Thank you.